When we are anticipating that there may be aspiration, we have to take aspiration prophylaxis as well as when we are able to intubate either by endotracheal tube or by LMA. If possible, we have to get suction to minimize the damage to the lungs by aspiration content.
Yes, that's a very good point. Actually, Dr. Manokant was trying to suction out. I think for the second laryngoscopy, he was asking for suction. I think
during laryngoscopy, but after getting airway assess, we can able to do better way.
Yes, definitely agree. One more thing I wanted to bring. Once Dr. Lalit said, that came to my mind. Actually, the aspiration in this case could have been because of the endotracheal tube in the esophagus and stomach pushing air inside. That could have actually precipitated aspiration. I think that's another very important reason why we shouldn't blindly thrust the tube inside without knowing where it is going.
One question that has popped up is, have you educated the patient about difficult intubation, or in the discharge summary, have you written that?
Yeah, it is. That's a very important point. I think just like an allergy band, people also need to have some difficult airway identification methods. So when they come for future surgeries, the anesthetist will be aware that, okay, it is a difficult airway. So we do have to have, there are some, depending on the institution, I think there are practices by which they identify that a particular patient is a difficult airway from the previous anesthetic. But we don't have anything as a standard. We should probably have.
Is Bicetra or sodium citrate available in our country? Are anybody using it?
I have never come across, only the common things we use only is prokinetic, metoclopramide and H2 receptor blockers. I've never used sodium citrate. I'm not sure if it's available.
We have used sodium citrate was available in 1997 to 2000 and not many takers were there. American Remedies was the company that was manufacturing. Because there were no takers, they abandoned manufacturing the drug, but it was available earlier.
Somebody has asked, can you explain the ramp position?
Yeah.
So I think Dr. Manokant already explained it. So we put, you can actually use a pillow or you can use sheets, as a result of which patient is actually head up like this, so that the patient's sternum and the tragus should be in line. So the advantage of this, it was also called head elevated laryngoscopy position or HELP position. There are two advantages for this. One, because the patient is head up, the FRC is better. And so the patient can tolerate a longer period of apnea without desaturation. And because it is head up, the gastroesophageal reflux is also lesser. The risk of aspiration is also lesser with the ramp position. Always routinely, we do it for patients who are obese, including parturients. But I don't think it is a regular habit to intubate all parturients in the ramp position. What is it, Dr. Sunil? Usually they are intubated only in the supine position, though ramp is suggested whenever you're anticipating a difficult airway.
Yeah, actually, in fact, all our bariatric surgeries and even morbidly obese patient, we have customized a ramp in our hospital where it costs very less. But importantly, yes, it is indeed a very great position because it opens up the neck and the distance between the chin and the sternum is widened. And even if you don't have a short handled blade, which is recommended, especially in obese patients, you can intubate, especially with the opened up, increasing distance between the chin and the sternum. So definitely it's going to be, it is indeed a great device, ramp.
Dr. Sunil, one more question has come. Someone has asked, when they say they want to proceed with surgery with a supraglottic device, ventilation was possible, would it be ideal to attempt intubation when senior expert has arrived? I think Dr. Sunil, that's what he answered that question.
Yeah, I think again, primum non nocere. First of all, do no harm. When you have something in hand, ventilation is good, air exchange is good, and patient is coming out of the relaxant, don't lose what you have in hand. A bird in hand is worth than a bird two in bush. So there is no need to do this unless you have a fiber optic scope. Surgery is going to get prolonged, or patient ends up with some crisis like hemorrhage and other things where you need a definite airway. Otherwise, no heroic things.
No, the answer is no unless you have a complication and a prolonged surgery. The next question is, does the height of the table also has to be adjusted? See, for any intubation, it is important to keep the height of the table at your xiphisternum level so that you can, it is easy. So what we are talking about, sternum to tragus, is for the patient. For the table, for everyone, it has to be at the comfortable level. That's very important. Again, that's also Dr. Sunil pointed out. Sometimes the patient is very far away. Sometimes the table is too low or the table is too high. So the first attempt at laryngoscopy is the best attempt. So we have to make sure the table position is fine. The patient is close to us and at an appropriate height and ramped. That makes the first laryngoscopy more successful.
Madam, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Lalit.
Yes, madam. When we are making the ramp position, again, the height of table will be increased. So according to operator, if required, because of the operator height, we may require some foot steps.
Yeah, actually, Manokant emphasized that you may have to stand on a stool or a step
Yes.
so that height is adequately taken care of.
Yeah.
I'll just run the scenario.
We have Mrs. Sunita, 27 years, G3P1L1, previous section, preterm labor, has PROM more than 30 hours. She is about 30 GMI, 34 weeks gestation. High vaginal swab, CPC are awaited. Antibiotics, oral erythromycin. She started on. She's for category 2 C-section. Currently, she's AFFRI, shifted to the OT.
Good morning, Sunita. How are you? I'm Dr. Sunil Pandya. I'm going to be an anesthesiologist for this case. Okay. I've gone to your record. You have been leaking from below, right? For more than 1.5 days. Yeah. Nothing to worry. What I plan to do is I've already discussed with the surgeon also. I'll be turning over on the side and giving a small inject in your back, and only lower part of the body will get inside. Is that okay?
Okay.
You'll feel numb from below your chest. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you have the signing, please?
Yes, sir. Is the patient identified, sir?
Yeah, she's Sunita, identified.
Is the monitor connected, sir?
Monitors are being connected, yes.
Is anesthesia workstation checked?
Yeah, the workstation has been checked, they have checked the systems, checks everything, all the things, equipment, routine equipment, instruction working, emergency drugs are on, everything very there, ready?
Sir, any allergies?
She is not aware of any allergies.
Any difficult intubation?
Could be difficult intubation, yes.
Any risk of aspiration?
Risk of aspiration is there, but I think she has received antacid prophylaxis, yes.
Okay, sir. Ma'am, any risk of blood loss? Maybe we have to wait. Blood group, ma'am? A positive. Okay, any antibiotics recommended?
She's going to augment it, right? Okay. Earlier she was on erythromycin, so we change our augmented. Okay. Is the pediatrician happy with the antibiotic augmented?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. What I do is I just turn you on your side as said. I give a small injection, okay? Just can you help turn the patient? I'll just go and scrub and come back. Okay? Yeah. I think spiral has been given. Can we just put a wedge, ma'am? And put a wedge, give oxygen. Start forward. Start forward, please. Can we do the demo? I'm just checking the level. Are you feeling numb here? Are you feeling numb? Are you feeling numb here? Numbness here? 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 D4, yeah. Please proceed, ma'am. The adequate block has been achieved. Time out has been done.
Yes, thank you.
Time out.
The complex surgical complex, it is sterilized also.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. Is the perfect elected on? Yes. And then microgram. The same thing is blood pressure, falling blood pressure. Can you give everything 6 milligrams, please? Is the weight kept properly? I think the weight is out. You can remove the weight. Blood pressure is slightly falling. Blood pressure.
Patient is having little bit of infection.
Oxytocin already has been given. You already give carbohydrates. Okay, give 250 micrograms carbohydrates. Intramuscularly, show me the ampule. Yeah, show me the ampule. Yeah. You have escape asthma? No escape asthma, right? Okay. I'm giving intramuscularly. Carbohydrates given, madam. I think blood pressure is still on the lower side. Is it? You can see. 3 minutes. Yeah. You will change the frequency. Don't worry, okay? You'll be all right, don't worry. Use condenser on, no? You have to create a condenser on, create a She's taking for example, can you increase oxygen for the 15 liters? Yes. Can I add a stethoscope? I don't know if she's bronchus for the middle of pharma first. She's not an asthmatic, right? Take a deep breath in. Yeah, nothing to it. Lungs are clear. Nothing to worry. Okay, blood pressure is still low. How much deputy? Can you give me suction, please? Can you give me suction? Don't worry. Because you can have first you have nausea. Don't worry, okay? Don't worry. Can you give acutylene 600 milligram more acutylene, please? Yes. I want to check the level. Can you just cough a bit? Can you just cough? Yes. Cough is little weaker. Can you just say your name again? Can you say your name again? Can you just hold the finger tightly? Not able to speak. Okay. I think the block has come a little more. Load adrenaline and call the Manokan, please. Load adrenaline, 10,000. Give 3 cc intravenously. Dr. Manokan, we are running. She is little high BMI, PPRL, almost 1.5 days duration. Regular routine spinal, continuous anti-20 micrograms. And drop initially was around D4, but now it's gone up. But I don't know high spinal the cause. She had in breathless and blood pressure is still low despite the vaccinations are also low. 18 mg of acutylene and 12 mg of pyruvate gone in. I just pushed adrenaline 3 ml of volume 10,000. We give 1 more ml. Yeah, we just change the blood pressure. Give 1 more ml. Yeah. Now it will start. Now it will what are you feeling? 6 ml per hour. Still feel breathless? Lungs are clear. And do you think it is just high pressure or did you 1 more cannula? Did we send some blood samples, right? Did we get the reports? Not yet. The WBC count is 22,000 is what I found out. Okay. And nothing is affected, right?
Now it is corrected.
Correct. No bleeding.
No, that uterus is well retracted now.
Okay. Lungs are clear. Lungs are clear. I think she's also a little bit. Yeah, wow. So we have to pull out the sepsis also along with just hypertension because not lactic block is one also could be B1.
We are waiting for the results of the platform.
And we can complete the section. Yeah, we'll shift that to the ICU. So I think just inform the ICU for a bed. We may need ultrasound, 2D echo, and have to put arterial cannula and central line. I okay with the science of this. And all of the hydrogens are concerned. We are setting up antibiotics to piperacillin, tazobactam, and bilateral.
Okay.
Okay, I think we'll sign out and then we'll shift her to ICU.
Yeah. Dr. Baby Abgar is good in view of prematurity and PROM. We have done lactic.
PPRM, doctor, it's a 34 weeker, preterm PPR. So keep giving fluids. Give fluids, and send a blood gas because when the baby is having acidic nephrology, she also must be having this thing. Looks like poliomyelitis. We just have to.
Uterus will retracted and the bones
We may have to give at peptide and other thing. Procalcitonin blood cultures we have to everything. All the family will have to consider. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any comments or should we run the scenario again? Manokant,
Yes, sir.
would you like to comment or should we run and again debrief?
I think
Basically, this was a patient who had a profound persistent hypotension and a high. Initially, the block was okay. Then subsequently, it became a high spinal.
And discussing, Dr. Sunil.
Okay, we have Mrs. Sunita, 27 years, G3P1L1, previous section, preterm labor, has PROM more than 30 hours. She's about 30 BMI, 34 weeks gestation, high vaginal swab, CPC are awaited, antibiotics, oral erythromycin. She started on. She's for category 2 C-section. Currently, she's afebrile, shifted to OT.
Good morning, Sunita. I'm from Sunil Pandya. I'm going to be an anesthesiologist for this case. Okay. I've gone to your record. You've been leaking from below, right, for more than 1.5 days. Yeah. Nothing to worry. What I plan to do is I've already discussed with the surgeon also. I'll be turning you on the side and giving a small injection in your back, and only lower part of the body will get inside. Is that okay?
Okay.
You'll feel numb from below your chest. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you have the signing, please?
Yes. Is the patient identified, sir?
Yeah, she's Sunita, identified.
Is the monitor connected, sir?
Monitors are being connected, yes.
Is anesthesia workstation checked?
Yeah, the workstation has been checked, they have checked it, check everything, all the things, equipment, routine equipment, there is insertion working, emergency drugs are on, there is everything very there, ready, there is, yeah.
Sir, any allergies?
She is not aware of any allergies.
Any difficult information, sir?
Could be difficult giving, yes.
Any risk of aspiration?
Risk of aspiration is there, but I think she has received antacid prophylaxis, yes.
Okay, sir. Ma'am, any risk of blood loss? Maybe we have to. Blood group, ma'am? A positive. Okay, any antibiotics recommended? I'm going to give it.
She's going to augment it, right? Okay. Here shows an erythromycin, so we'll change our augmented test. Okay, are you, is the pediatrician happy with the antibiotic augmented?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. What I'll do is I'll just turn you on your side as said, I give small injection as well, okay? Just can you help turn with the patient? I'll just go and scrub and come back, okay?
Dr. Sunil, someone has put in the chat that can you explain the scenario with steps, sir, because of the monitor sounds can't hear properly.
See, basically, this was a lady who was admitted with leaky membranes almost more than 30 hours duration. 30 hours. Can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, it's audible.
yes, go ahead, sir.
And importantly, they had sent the obstetrician in the, at that time of admission had sent a high vaginal swab and CBC as per the protocol, and those reports were awaited, and they were contemplating to give steroids for fetal lung maturity because she came with preterm labor as well. But unfortunately, she set into labor and they had to do a cesarean section because she was previous section. It's a category 2 cesarean section. Otherwise, no contraindication. Reports were awaited. She's clinically okay, afebrile. There is no any fever or any history of fever. And we decided to go for a regional anesthesia, spinal single shot spinal anesthesia. Anything so far? Manokant, Akila?
Yes, yeah, the good thing is the additional history about what was the type of anesthesia which was chosen for her previous section. That would also add some additional point to us, whether she had any post-dural puncture headache, maybe not in this scenario, but as a general history taking, that will help us in deciding the type of anesthesia also.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And any allergy to antibiotic, premature rupture of membranes. So the good thing is, like you had asked the obstetrician whether it is okay and we have to convert this to Augmentin. Is it okay for you, or do you want to add any other broad spectrum? I think that's very important because infection control lies in our hands also.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
I think there's some also giving augmentin around 34, 36 weeks can cause NEC in the neonates is one more thing that we may have to consider. But when
That was the reason we checked with the pediatrician also. So that, yeah. So basically, we decided to give spinal because there was no apparent contraindication to give regional anesthesia. And we all know that regional anesthesia is a safe bet in pregnancy unless it is absolutely contraindicated. And anything pertinent so far, I think one thing that is good communication between the team members, preoperative check, antacid prophylaxis, sign in, etc. have been carried out as per the protocol. Yeah.
The components of the WHO safety surgical checklist have been done very systematically. That's the best part of the first clip, I
Yeah.
would say.
So we'll just take it further.
I think spinal has been given. Can we just put a wedge, man, and put a wedge, give oxygen. Start forward, please. Can we do the demo? I'm just checking the level. Are you feeling numb here? Are you feeling numb? Are you feeling numb here? Numbness here? 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 D4, yeah. Please proceed, ma'am. The adequate block has been achieved. Time out has been done.
Yes, thank you.
Time out.
See, one other thing that is very important is whenever you are giving regional anesthesia, one thing is we depend on the surgeon to check for adequacy of spinal block. Rather than that, it is better that you do it yourself. Give enough time for the block to appear. Like generally with hyperbaric bupivacaine with fentanyl is what we routinely give in our hospital, plus or minus morphine. But after about 4 to 5 minutes, assess the level of block, and gradually the block keeps ascending. But at least within 4 to 5 minutes, assess the adequacy of block. Then you allow the surgeon to proceed, rather than asking surgeon to check with the tooth forceps and then allowing them to proceed. And then the patient open up and they separate the recti. Suddenly, patient starts yelling. So adequacy of block has to be checked by the anesthesiologist. Is what I wanted to emphasize at this juncture. Anything else you would like to comment, Aruna and Man?
A couple of good things which I noticed was you insisted on putting oxygen by mask.
Yeah.
So many people have noticed that if the spinal anesthesia is being given, they don't have the practice of putting oxygen by face mask. So that was one thing I noticed, which you specifically said. And then you also said about the uterine displacement, then wedge, and you also said about co-loading. I think, as a reflex that whenever you give a spinal anesthetic to prevent hypotension, all these steps have to be said, and that point has to be noted. That was a good thing. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in addition to those things, one more thing that we could do is if phenylephrine is routinely available in our institute, to simultaneously start phenylephrine.
Yeah. In fact, the next step is that only if you hear that here.
Complex surgical complex. Non-surgical sterilized also.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Is the prophylactic on?
The prophylactic phenylephrine on is generally this is what we follow. We don't treat hypotension. We prevent hypotension. It should be the norm. Like don't allow blood pressure to fall. So prophylactically give vasopressors so that you can minimize, because we know that the incidence of hypotension following spinal anesthesia with co-load, without co-load, with preload, without preload is almost about to the extent of 65 to 70%. And with prophylactic vasopressors, you can come down to less than 10%. So vasopressors are of paramount importance, especially prophylactically. Anything at this juncture, Aruna? Akila, Laditji? Archana, madam?
No, nothing.
Yeah.
100 micrograms. The same thing is blood pressure, falling blood pressure. Can you give everything 6 milligrams, please? Keep the wet scale properly. The baby is out, you can remove the wet. Pressure is slightly falling.
Patient is having little bit of infection. Ketonic pieces. Can you give carbo plus?
Oxytocin already has been given. You already give carbo plus.
Carbo plus also.
Okay, give 250 micrograms carbo plus. Intramuscularly. Show me the angio. Yeah, show me the angio. Yeah. You have history of asthma? No history of asthma, right? Okay. I'm giving intramuscularly. Carbo plus given, madam. I think blood pressure is still on the lower side. Is it? That's it. 3 minutes. Yeah.
See, one of the important thing is we rely so much of on technicians. Sometimes we, despite asking them that everything is checked, they fail to or they miss out certain steps. In this patient, the frequency of blood pressure recording, generally we put every 2 to 3 minutes for first till the baby is out. And this was the frequency was not changed. So we went and it was same the whole reading. It was at 5 minutes frequency. So whenever you give spinal, post-spinal, the frequency of blood pressure should be every minute or every 2 to 3 minutes, and say that it's on a continuous mode basis, at least 2 to 3 minutes. Anything, Aruna, you?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I have noticed some residents where it would have been under manual only.
Yeah.
So it will be like 30 minutes into the surgery, and it will only be the first baseline BP reading which was there. All that happens. So that's a very important point which you brought out, that we need to look at the limit set by our residents or by technicians. And another thing, good thing was I noticed that you asked when you were loading Carbopros, show me the ampule, you said. So
Yeah.
many times critical incidents happen because of drug errors, where without reading the ampule, like we've had incidents where ephedrine and adrenaline looked the same. And so adrenaline was loaded instead of ephedrine. So reading the label and is very, very important. I think that was another very important point regarding critical incidents, which you brought out when you asked to, same thing about history of asthma. I'm sure you would already ask for history of asthma.
Yeah,
Counter
recheck
checking
it again.
again before giving Carbopros is another very good practice. It's like a double check, I think.
Yes.
Sir, I would just like to add Dr. Archana here, sir.
Give the frequency.
Madam.
Hello.
Yeah, tell me, madam.
Dr. Archana,
Yeah.
I actually, I would always emphasize that co-loading is important, but use of vasopressors. And instead of strictly following phenylephrine regime, we can also use ephedrine and, if necessary, mephentermine also, as and when required. Like if the patient, suppose some parturient is already having low heart rate, and we are a little cautious about using phenylephrine, then we can always go for even mephentermine or ephedrine. That's what I would like to say.
Yeah, see, vasopressors, again, there are so many, metronidazole, mephentermine, ephedrine, norepinephrine, so many things are there. But yes, one of the target is see that the uteroplacental blood flow and the fetal perfusion, and any vasopressor that maintains the normal pH and lactate in the fetus is what is desirable. And I must tell you at this juncture, since this point has come up, amongst all the vasopressors, the most superior as on today with all the RCTs and meta-analysis, number one is norepinephrine, followed by phenylephrine, followed by ephedrine. But again, having said that, more importantly, the targets of blood pressure are important. But if you want to look at the pH and the lactate in the newborn, then norepinephrine is number one, number two is phenylephrine, and probably ephedrine later on. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Manokant or Akila, you want to comment anything on this?
Also regarding the monitoring,
Yeah.
I think it would be ideal to add an end-tidal carbon dioxide also, even though the patient is under spinal anesthesia. That will give you
You have brought a
yes,
very
yes.
good point,
I think that's
Akila.
a mandate.
Yes. In fact, we
to
have
monitor.
an
It will
documentary.
give you more tools regarding it.
So another thing, small point that I usually do is I also look at heart rate. So usually what happens, we have the blood pressure at 3 minutes interval. Immediately after spinal, the heart rate starts going up, and people wait for those 3 minutes. Then the cuff inflates for another 30 to 40 seconds, and we lose valuable time. So when I see the heart rate going up, I start doing the phenylephrine infusion without actually waiting for the cuff to show. I mean, without actually waiting for the NIBP to appear.
Yeah.
And that is also the time when the patient starts complaining of vomiting. So that prophylaxis also should be looked into, because the moment the heart pressure starts falling, then the patient becomes starts complaining of nausea. So we can also add some antiemetic and before starting the case. And then also it is important that we assess the airway for whatever kind of anesthesia that we are preparing, whether it's epidural conversion to spinal or spinal anesthesia that we would like to go forward with. So assessment of the airway is very important here.
Absolutely. Cannot be undermined. Yes, madam.
There is one question.
Don't worry, okay? We'll go all right, don't worry.
Yeah, tell me.
There is one question in the chat about the phenylephrine infusion, which Dr. Manokant has already written.
Yeah.
Is it via the central or peripheral veins, and what is the dose? I think he's already answered it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We use peripheral veins.
She's declaring important saturation. Can you increase oxygen for the 15 liters? Yes. Can I add a stethoscope? I don't know if she's bronchospasm because of pharma first. She's not an asthmatic, right?
No.
Take a deep breath. Yes. Yeah, nothing to it. Lungs are clear. Nothing to it. Okay, blood pressure is still low. How much epidural? Can you give me suction, please? Can you give me suction? Don't worry. Because we are doing carbo cross, you might have nausea. Don't worry. Okay? Don't worry. Can you give?
So again, basically, patient having breathlessness following delivery is a very important aspect that cannot be ignored, that cannot be undermined, because there are several causes of breathlessness. In this case, one of the cause was that was ruled out was carboprost-induced bronchospasm. But again, having said that, breathlessness following delivery, several things, dynamics change rapidly. It could be blood loss, which is like already the obstetrician has hinted that there is a atonicity. Blood loss can be one of the cause of like hypovolemia can be one of the cause. Suddenly blood if you see the pulse rate has gone up from 90s to 140 without any pain. The blood pressure has fallen, SATs have fallen, she has difficulty in breathing. Is it embolism? Is it amniotic fluid embolism? Is it pulmonary embolism? Is it heart failure? Is it sepsis? Is it anesthetic cause? So many causes can come up, and we need to have a wide differentials so that we can pin down and give appropriate management. Anything you want to comment? Manokant, you want to comment anything so far? She's having breathlessness. So what else can you think of?
This is actually a very serious condition. Breathlessness suddenly after delivery is always scary. So it can be even embolism. It can be sudden. So persistent hypo. So as you have seen, we have done all the things pretty well to control hypotension, but still she was having tachycardia and hypotension. So either it could, with her history of background history of PROM for 30 hours, it could be either sepsis related or it could be a cardiac condition like embolism or any other cardiac condition. So these are the top things that will come to our mind, and we'll have to look into those things.
Can I put in one more thing?
I want to check the level.
If there is,
Madam?
sir, if there is breathlessness after delivery of the baby, it could have also been other pre-existing causes like some cardiac cause, because nowadays it has been seen that PIH claims, PIH is especially very common. And then even hyperchronic hypertension in patients who come with for delivery. So right after the delivery of the baby and the sudden shift of blood that happens from the placenta may be cause in addition to the high block that the patient feels breathless about. So it might be the sudden shift. So we might have to even rule out the cardiac cause also.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So basically, it's a wide differentials, but ultimately, it's just that we need to do a symptom-based management initially, and then subsequently do a root cause analysis.
Yeah, or it can just be high level.
Can you stop? Yes. Okay, little weaker. Can you just say your name again? Can you say your name again? Can you just hold the finger tightly? Hold the finger tightly. Not able to speak. Okay. I think the block has come a little more. Load adrenaline and call of the monogram breath.
See, if you look at if you look at the things here, assessment of block. See, not to even the patients having breathlessness. Initially, the block that was assessed was at D3 level. So your own cause might be there in terms of high spinal. So assessment of block, and if you see the one of the rapid way of assessing block is make the patient cough. If the patient was talking earlier, now she starts whispering. Again, that's an indication that the block has ascended up. She's not able to phonate. So high block, sometimes even the finger grip, the patient will be having a poor finger grip, poor cough, and a whispering nature. These are all signs of high spinal. Very, very important way, rapid way of assessing is rather than checking the level, which takes little time, best thing is asking patient to phonate, asking patient to cough, asking patient about a hand grip. Rapid way, okay, if the hand grip is good, at least it is not about D2, roughly. At this juncture, would you like to say anything, Aruna, Akila, Lalit?
Yeah, I agree with you. The differential diagnosis is quite vast at this point of time.
Yeah.
Cardiac failure is something you need to rule out. Only thing is when you auscultated, you said
Lungs are clear.
hear any creps. That would give us some indication whether it is a cardiac failure.
Yeah.
If it's a high spinal, more likely we will be having a bradycardia rather than a tachycardia. So it is this looks like, I don't know if was it a sepsis related thing? I'm not sure, because there is some tachycardia and there is a desaturation with some amount of high spinal. So as of now, I think it is very difficult to come to a diagnosis as to what it is, and you only have to treat it symptomatically, like how you pointed out.
Even embolism, you'll have clear lungs,
Yes.
but saturations will be falling, and there will be tachycardia, and patient will be restless.
Yes, and hemodynamics also, that will give us a clue whether it is embolic. I mean, hypotension is again a very important feature of embolism.
Yeah, they will just take it further.
Yes.
Adrenaline, 1 in 10,000. Give 360 intravenously. Dr. Manukam, she is little high BMI, PPRL, almost 1.5 days duration, and routine spinal, and these are retrievable anti 25 grams, and drop each level of D4, but now it's gone up, it is gone up. But I don't know, high spinal, the balls, she had in breathless, blood pressure still, despite the vaccinations are also low, 18 NP of equipment and 200 mg of electric volume. I just put adrenaline, 3 ml of 1 in 10,000. We give 1 more ml. Yeah, but this recheck the blood pressure. Again, 1 more ml. Yeah. Now it will be start now. And Sunita, how are you? What is feeling? 6 ml per hour. Still feel breathless? Lungs are clear. Lungs are clear. And do you think it is just high spinal or did we one more cannula? Did we send some blood samples, right? Did we get the reports? Not yet. The BPC count is 22,000 is what I found out. Okay. Right?
Bleeding now it is corrected.
Correct. No bleeding.
No, uterus is well retracted now.
Okay. See, lungs are clear. Lungs are clear. Lungs are clear. I think she's also a little bit. Yeah, wow. This is fine. So we have to rule out the sepsis also along with just hypertension because not connecting. Block is one almost up to B1.
We are waiting for the results of this. Platform.
And we can complete the section. No, yeah, we'll shift them to the ICU. So I think just inform the ICU for a bed. We may need ultrasound 2D echo and have to put arterial cannula central line. I okay with the and all of the hydrogens are culture. We are setting up antibiotics to piperacillin, tazobactam, and cilatractrin.
Okay.
Okay, I think we'll sign out and then we'll shift her to ICU.
Dr. BD Abgar is good in view of prematurity and PROM. We have done that.
It's a PPRM, that is 34 weeker, preterm PPRM. So keep giving fluids, give fluids, and send a blood gas because when the baby is having acidemia, probably she also must be having this thing. Looks like chorioamnionitis. We just have to see. We may have to give piperacillin and let us see. Procalcitonin blood cultures we have already got the all the family will have to consider. Okay.
So if you look at it, basically a good interaction between the team members is of paramount importance when the patient is unstable intraoperatively. Many a times it so happens that you keep managing on your side and there might be a surgical cause and vice versa. So it is always better that you keep the surgeon in the loop because is the cause of hypertension because of bleeding inside, is the cause of hypertension because of chorioamnionitis, is the cause of hypertension because of any cardiovascular cause, or is it because of anesthetic cause or compounding causes. So in this case, the block has definitely gone up. But if you look at 30 hours, 1.5 days duration of leaky membranes, along with WBC count of 22,000. So definitely chorioamnionitis is one thing which has to be strongly suspected. So escalation of antibiotics, fluids, and importantly, whenever there is high spinal, it is always better to go for a strong vasopressors because many a times you go on giving ephedrine or phenylephrine may not act, and whenever you have a high spinal, the drug of choice is adrenaline. The drug of choice is adrenaline. So high spinal, total spinal, do not go for ephedrine or phenylephrine or atropine. Of course, atropine for bradycardia, but importantly, have a low threshold to use adrenaline. The moment we give adrenaline, the breathlessness improved. At the same time, blood pressure also improved. Yes, definitely the block will take time for it to regress, but importantly, treatment, even improving blood pressure itself can reduce the sense of breathlessness or air hunger. Very, very important. Anything you want to add, Manokant or any of the other faculty, please?
Yeah, I think so. With the good things that we did were in this scenario, adrenaline was promptly started. So inotropes were started, and then patient was kept on non-rebreathing mask, but still there was still hypoxemia. So one thing we could have done is quickly shifted to 100% oxygen. That was not done in this one, and then the discussions were good. What to do next? What investigations need to be sent, and how to manage further. So that was the good part. And I would add that always in such a scenarios, it is better to have that ABG, 2D echo, and ECG to get an idea of what's happening with the cardiac condition.
If you see in this case, again, communication with pediatrician also is equally important. The clue that we got sepsis as a cause is even the lactation, the neonates are very high, and metabolic acidosis, high lactated mother. So it was sepsis along with high spinal causing profound persistent hypertension. There are a few questions before we go on to the discussion. There are a few questions that we need to answer. Like one thing which Manokant, what we type here is not reflected in the chat box on the delegate side. So it's better we answer them. So prophylactic phenylephrine to be given via infusion or bolus.
So it can be done either ways, whichever you are comfortable with and you are trained to do. But infusion is better over single shot boluses, because with infusion the heart rate can be titrated in a much better way. With bolus, if you give like 60 or 80 mics bolus, suddenly they may have severe bradycardia, again needing to correct that bradycardia with some atropine or glycopyrrolate. So instead, if you start a stable infusion, that's a better way of managing. But if you don't have the means to give infusion and monitor properly, then small, maybe reduce the bolus to like 20 mics. Frequent 20 mic boluses also should be fine. And we use peripheral line for.
What do you do, Akila, at your place?
We generally give only bolus doses of phenylephrine because it's easier to measure the response also. So you give a dose and you just assess the response. Is it was there a predictable increase in BP or not? So I don't think it's a bad practice to choose infusion. It's a better way of monitoring whenever there is a hypotension, especially because when it goes as an infusion, you don't know how much was the dose that has gone over a minute. Has it reached or not? All those things are not evident to you. So we give as a bolus dose initially to see the responses. I think that's our practice.
Yeah, I think it depends upon whatever is the local practice basically, and whatever people are comfortable doing.
See, one more question that has come up is, how long would you like to continue prophylaxis of phenylephrine?
So here again, basically after spinal, when the mother is having hypotension, you start simultaneously start co-loading and phenylephrine infusion or boluses. And usually after a while, after baby delivery with auto transfusion and with the flu, by the time you must have given a lot of fluids. I mean, you must have given adequate fluids, and slowly the hypotension settles down. And once you notice that the hypotension has settled and pressures are maintaining, you can taper off the phenylephrine infusion. Some women may require for almost till the end of the surgery, but in practice, you notice that most of them would stabilize after probably when the surgeon starts closing the uterus or during that time, around that time.
Are you in sync with what Manokant said, Aruna?
Yes. Yeah, it's audio on. Yes, I agree totally with whatever he said. I mean, it's and like how Akila said, phenylephrine infusions is what we don't use it. We've not started using it. That's all. As of now, we keep phenylephrine as well as ephedrine, depending on the
our protocol also is boluses of phenylephrine, because noradrenaline, even though it enhances or the cardiac output is better with noradrenaline because the bradycardia is not there, but it's cumbersome to make an infusion of noradrenaline. Not much of a difference in various meta-analysis. So we keep a combination of phenylephrine and ephedrine. If there is a bradycardia, then ephedrine. If there's tachy, then we use phenyl.
The other problem with noradrenaline in physiologically normal patients is that with very little dose, the blood pressure shoots up very high, and to control it is difficult. I mean, to maintain it in a stable way is difficult. You go too high or too low.
Like how Dr. Sunil said, it is very cumbersome to have an infusion pump and noradrenaline loaded. Whereas phenylephrine and ephedrine are all, as boluses, they're always loaded along with atropine and kept on the drug trolley always.
One more question from the delegates is, won't adrenaline increase tachycardia? See, yes, this patient already is tachycardic. The pulse rate has jumped from 100 to 140. But one of the things that I want to give a very clear and loud message is, whenever there is high spinal and the patient is almost having difficulty in breathing, have a low threshold to use adrenaline. Because if you look at the maternal mortality because of high spinal, one of the commonest cause of cardiac arrest with high spinal is delayed use of adrenaline. Delayed use of adrenaline. So if you use adrenaline early, like in anaphylaxis, when you have anaphylactic shock, anaphylaxis, adrenaline early rather than adrenaline late. Similarly, when you have high spinal or total spinal, use adrenaline early. Yes, rate is high, definitely yes. But otherwise, unless there is an underlying cardiac cause which can go haywire, but by and large, adrenaline can be used. Heart rate will settle down soon once you know the appropriate cause. You would like to comment anything on this?
No, I agreed. Spinal hypotension, it is like ultimately treatment is with adrenaline boluses.
Yeah, moreover, when there is total spinal or a very high spinal and profound hypotension, nothing else works, and also the patient will eventually end up with bradycardia and arrest.
So, or when they have reviewed the cause of maternal mortality with high spinals and total spinal, one of the important cause of maternal mortality was delayed use of adrenaline. They went on giving ephedrine, boluses, atropine, noradrenaline, but adrenaline, by the time they used adrenaline, it was bradycardic arrest resistant. So use adrenaline early and reverse the pathology, or at least it helps in optimizing the blood pressure soon.
One more question. Is it okay to give spinal in a septic patient with increased WBC count and increased neutrophil ratio?
See, absolutely good question. A very good question, rather. See, whenever the patient is having sepsis, overt sepsis, high grade fever or fever, in this case, the patient was afebrile, WBC count was elevated, and otherwise patient appeared to be normal. But as I said, pregnant patients are the most deceptive lot. They deceive the clinicians, and you have to be guarded, you have to be careful. But the only contraindication of regional anesthesia in a septic patient is sepsis, severe sepsis. Otherwise, you can always give, especially under antibiotic coverage, you can always give.
Yeah, I think in our patient in this scenario, she was already on antibiotic. Her vitals were normal. It was not that she was in a severe septic shock like situation.
Yeah.
So because she was stable on antibiotic, we proceeded with spinal anesthesia.
The dose of adrenaline for treating hypotension. That's the next question.
Yeah. So generally, what we do is, yes, we don't push in 1 milligram of adrenaline intravenously, yes, like in cardiac arrest situation. So we dilute it to 1 in 10,000 and give 1 or 2 cc boluses and then titrate the response basically. And if you look at towards the end of the scenario, when the expert Manokant came in, he asked for an ultrasound and arterial line and central line and all those things. So yes, whenever you feel the patient is having persistent hemodynamic instability, you need to think beyond, like additional venous access was secured, fluid boluses were given, and central line, arterial line were being considered and contemplated. So basically, the point and the message that was conveyed is just simple peripheral line may not be sufficient. You need to step up the monitoring when there is hemodynamic instability that persists. Is one of the important take home. Lalit ji, Archana, Akila.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, anything, sir? You want
Sir,
to? Yeah.
just to our youngster, what you had mentioned, it is a right point that whenever there is high spinal, we have not to go on to check by the needle pricks.
Yeah.
You had rightly mentioned, talk to the patient if whispering sound is there, if not able to cough loudly, and the finger grip. That is the right point that we can able to assess easily.
Yes.
There is good communication.
Yes.
Whenever team member in anesthesiologist, not only anesthesiologist, in that scenario, it's rightly mentioned that we have to talk to obstetrician also.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Along with that, in this, that whenever the instruction is given that drug, give this drug or give this drug, whoever giving the drug, if assistant is giving, he say that the drug is given.
Yeah. The closed loop communication is important.
Yes, sir. And one more thing, sir, whenever, if this is hypertensive, but if it is, we are making some differential diagnosis and it is cardiac patient and surgery is going on, we can able to alarm or keep our cardiology unit ready
Yes.
So whenever patient is shifting to ICU or in the OTS time is prolonging, then they can able to make echo at timely.
Yes. Yes. That's a point well taken, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just have a small one slide just to I'll basically it's an algorithm of hypotension. So whenever you have hypotension during surgery, what we do is we have an algorithmic approach where we follow basically. So when you have acute severe hypotension following neuraxial block for cesarean section, the first and foremost is the onset. If it is before delivery and after delivery. So before delivery, first and foremost, from our side, we need to rule out our causes, the anesthetic causes. And as we discussed, importantly, the anesthetic causes are high spinal, subdural block, total spinal, labor epidural to cesarean section issues. So one of the thing I must tell you that I don't know how many of you practice labor analgesia routinely, but at least there are some instances where your labor epidural may not be working optimally, for labor analgesia, and subsequently when the patient ends up for cesarean section, you give an epidural top up. Again, that doesn't work. Then what you do, because we have a propensity of giving regional anesthesia in almost 98% of our cesarean section, most of our fellows or the students or the consultants also, they turn the patient and give spinal. So giving spinal after an epidural top up is a certain cocktail for high spinal or profound hypotension. If you see the incidence of spinal anesthesia after an epidural top up is almost 80 to 90%, and at least about 10% of patients that require crash intubation. So you have to keep this entity in mind, especially when you have a failed epidural converted for cesarean section and then subsequently you give spinal. That's important. Second important cause is repeat spinal after failed spinal. So you need to define your failed spinal properly before you repeat spinal. So many a times it's a total failure or it's a partial failure or it may be a patchy block, but it's very important because the dose adjustment of local anesthetic in the repeat spine is of paramount importance. Again, if you reduce the dose drastically, it can be again repeat failure, or if you give a little conventional dose, it may be a high spinal. So anesthetic causes high spinal, subdural, total spinal are straightforward cases, but these are the little complex and they require more experience. So this is very important from our side. Before delivery, these are the commonest causes. Other important differential diagnosis is the coexisting causes. And when you see coexisting causes, musculoskeletal issues, like especially the patients having kyphoscoliosis, rotated spine, even 1 ml of hyperbaric bupivacaine, like 5 milligrams or 7 milligrams, it can ascend up and it can cause a high spinal. So musculoskeletal deformities, you have to be very careful because these patients are generally short-statured patients and you may end up with a high block. The third important cause is coexisting medical causes. Yes, especially cardiovascular causes. Patient may be having peripartum cardiomyopathies or heart disease complicating, which may not have, which may have gone unnoticed. Or importantly, surgical causes, occult bleeding. Many a times you have seen broad ligamental tear, which goes unnoticed. Patient may have hypotension, which goes unnoticed. And so communication with the patient is of paramount importance. And the third cause, which you often ignore, is the antihypertensive peak effect. Many a times, the patient may be on labetalol, patient may be on nifedipine, patient may be on clonidine, multiple 2 or 3 antihypertensives. They are given in the morning, and then subsequently patient comes to theater, you give spinal, everything adds up. So profound vasodilation can happen. So you have to keep in mind and see that vasopressors can appropriately be given. And medication error. When you tell your technician to give phenylephrine, they may give a vasodilator. So again, that closed loop communication, as Aruna said rightly, every drug that is loaded has to be checked by the anesthetist. And again, before administration, make sure that you are giving the right drug, right patient, right time, right route, and all those things, basic things, but they are very, very important. So medication errors also have to be kept in mind. Importantly, anaphylaxis. We know that anaphylaxis manifests with rash, bronchospasm, cough, laryngeal edema, but sometimes anaphylaxis can manifest with profound persistent hypertension. And there is one more thing that you have to keep in mind. So generally, as a protocol in our hospital, whenever if you are giving general anesthetic, we give only drugs pertaining to GA. We don't give ranitidine, ondansetron, propofol, succinylcholine, glyco, everything. Just give basic drugs that are necessary for induction and intubation. And after a certain time, then you can give other drugs. Suppose if you club multiple medications at a time, and if the patient has anaphylaxis, it is very difficult for you to differentiate different causes. So, of course, we know that anaphylaxis is most common with neuromuscular blocking agent, antibiotics, and neuromuscular blocking agent. But if you give minimal drugs, it is easy for you to analyze the cause. Then other important thing is hypotension or breathlessness after delivery. Again, anesthetic causes, they can continue and they can get aggravated, especially with oxytocin boluses. Many a times, some of the hospital they have previously they used to give 10 units bolus or 10 units rapidly, then they came to 5 units. But bolus oxytocin can cause severe hypotension and even sometimes pulmonary edema. Other thing is iatrogenic causes. Yes, central venous cannulations are relatively infrequent in obstetric unit, and if at all patient bleeds or there is indication, you end up with a CVP insertion induced pneumothorax or hemothorax and job. So you have to just keep in mind procedure related causes, and again coexisting medical causes also have to be kept in mind. So basically, whenever you have hypertension, if you have an algorithmic approach, generally you don't miss out any causes. Similarly, breathlessness, if you, as we said, as Dr. Manokan, Dr. Aparna, Dr. Archana, Madam, and others opined, embolism versus cardiovascular causes versus like Larigi emphasized that yes, cardiology consultation, all these things are of paramount importance because it may be many causes, but common causes are still common and uncommon causes are relatively rare. Would you like to add anything at this juncture?
I think you've covered everything, Dr. Sunil.